Coming to you direct from the nerve center of the galaxy's greatest comic. This is the 2000 AD Thrillcast.
Borag Thung, Earthlets, and welcome to the 2000 AD Thrillcast. And yet, is Borag Thung the right way to greet you for this one? Because we're not talking the galaxy's greatest comic. We're talking the Core and Buster Humour Special, which is out this month on the 17th of April from all good newsagents and comic book stores. It's a revival of some of the all-time greatest humour characters from British comics of the 1970s and 80s, and it is absolutely packed with strips from Sweeny Toddler to Frankie Stein, from Gums through to Deadly Headley, and just so many of them. And there's quizzes and word searches. It's the kind of comic you read when you were a kid, and hopefully will be appealing to a new generation of comic book readers and prospective comic book readers. So on this episode, we're welcoming just some of the many, many, many creators who worked on the Core and Buster Special to chat a little bit about it, what's in store, why we've decided to do this. Loads of chat, lots of laughs. Looking forward to that. It's just one of the titles that we've got coming out over the next month. So, Core and Buster Special, 17th of April. On the 4th of May, we have Free Comic Book Day. And Rebellion's title for Free Comic Book Day this year is Funny Pages, which is full of reprints of classic stories from humour comics in the 1970s and 80s. So the very characters we're reviving in the Core and Buster Special, these are some of their original appearances, and that's available from all participating comic book stores on the day. So make sure you queue early to get your copy. There's also coming up in May is the 2000 AD Regine, normal issue of 2000 AD, but specifically revisiting the strips that we had in our Free Comic Book Day issue last year. So, yeah, that's going to be absolutely fantastic. Different takes on our characters, introducing 2000 AD to a whole new audience. We've also got, blimey, on the 1st of May, we've got the Villains 2000 AD Villains Takeover Special, which is the bad guys getting to take over 2000 AD for the low, low price of 99p or 99 cents. That's available from all good comic book stores, not just in the UK, but also around the world. The order's been really good on that. Some really top creators working on that and giving the baddies a chance to shine of their own accord without, you know, things like interfering judges and blue-skinned genetic infantrymen. So there's so much coming out from 2000 AD over the next few weeks. And on Free Comic Book Day itself, we have 4 events. We have workshops for kids at the Vision space in Dundee Waterfront, at the Gallery of Modern Art in Glasgow, at Gosh Comics in London, and at Forbidden Planet in London. We also have a signing with Greg Staples, Pi Par, and Matt Smith. Now, all the details will be on the 2000 AD website. You can go along and have a look. It's also available as events on our Facebook page. The workshops are free to whoever comes along, but make sure you head along early to ensure your space. Materials are provided. It's an opportunity to encourage kids' love of comics, getting them to make their own comics based on characters from Core and Buster, but also to let their imagination run riot and hopefully give them a passion for illustrated storytelling. So much going on. Make sure you check out the 2000 AD website, 2000ad.com/news. And then we come on to the interview, which is with Keith Richardson, who's edited the Core and Buster Special. We've got writers Ned Hartley and Lizzie Boyle, and also artist Tanya Roberts. Like I said, these are just some of the many, many, many creators who've contributed strips to the Core and Buster Humour Special. So let's crack on and find out what's in store and have a few laughs along the way. So it's wonderful to be able to welcome just some of the many creators who are working on the Core and Buster Special this year. We'll kick off with Lizzie Boyle. Welcome, Lizzie.
Hello, thank you. Delighted to be here.
Also, Ned Hartley. Hiya, Ned.
Hello, how you doing?
Good, thank you. And Tanya Roberts.
Hey, how you doing?
And of course, we are joined by not only Keith Richardson, but also his daughter. Hey, Keith.
Hello, guys.
Right, so we're talking about the Cora and Buster special, which is out in the middle of April. Keith, as editor, do you want to explain a little bit about why we've decided to do the Cora and Buster special, the choice of doing Cora and Buster, and the kind of things that people can expect?
Yeah, well, the reason why we chose to do it is simply because we have so much of this fantastic, a rich archive of these humour characters, and it's all about reintroducing them to the world, reintroducing or for the first time introducing younger readers to some of these wonderful characters that we own. The reason why we came up with the name Core Buster is I don't know really. We initially we were very wise and we were going to call it something like Core Buster. It's a crazy whizzer and chips whoopee comic. And let's face it, retailers would just be like, no, stop that. Too much of a.
What's the acronym for that? That's
God only knows. But we eventually filtered it down, and Buster was always going to be in the title because I don't know. I'm of the opinion that almost every other IPC humour title folded into Buster. So Buster's the kind of heart of the humour comics, really. And Core Buster just sounded better than Whoopee Buster or Buster and Whizzer and Chips. It just kind of fit quite well. So, the name's interchangeable. We could have called it anything, really. But the fact of the matter is that we've plucked out some wonderful comics from our vast array of titles that we have. So there are characters in there that weren't necessarily from Core or even from Buster originally. But it's just a title, and it's a good title at that.
And in terms of the characters that you've chosen to bring back, because these are characters from the absolute heyday of British humour comics. So I remember when I was a kid, looking at the newsstands, and you'd see like 6, 7, 8 humour titles, almost from like one publisher alone. What's the logic behind the characters that we've chosen to bring back?
To be quite honest, there's a mixture of things, really. To be quite honest, I chose a lot of the characters that I remembered, I liked reading about growing up. One of my favourite characters out of the lot of them was Faceache, Ken Reed's brilliant Faceache. So I knew he had to be in there. I also like Kid Kong. I gravitated towards a lot of the kind of comedy horror characters, which is why I wanted a lot of them back in there. But also, you kind of get a feel just going through the archive and looking online of, which characters people like the most and which characters, offer a bit more than others. So that's what it kind of pared down to, really. I mean, there's several that I would have liked to include it, but we just didn't have the page space.
Mm-hmm. And was it always the intention that this would be all new strips?
Yeah, well, that was always my intention, yes.
Okay.
I mean, the old stuff's great, and we're collecting that all up for all those lucky people out there that want to buy the graphic novels, but I wanted this to feel nice and contemporary and fresh, and just prove that, the characters themselves, the actual concepts are fantastic, and they're still relevant and funny and cool today. Well, and I think our wonderful writers and artists have proved that on this project.
Perfect. Well, you've already mentioned one character there, Faceache. Ned, you're the writer on the new Faceache story. Yes. I mean, this must be considering Ken Reed's stature in the industry, this must have been a fairly daunting prospect.
Oh, absolutely, completely. But at the same time, it's such a fun character that it's kind of the dauntingness of it is eclipsed by just the sheer joy of getting to kind of play with, such a fun character to write. I mean, it works so well, and there's so many different situations that kind of come out of just incredibly stupid faces. It works brilliantly. Another thing about it is it's such a visual idea. It works brilliantly as a comic. So there's kind of there's a lot you can do with it, and it's one of those characters that it can be very easily slotted into kind of lots of different situations. Both and in very modern situations too, which is why it was such a joy to get my hands on.
Is there a temptation to play up the nostalgia when dealing with a character like this, or did you want to do something fresh and interesting?
I always hope that I like to do things that are very interesting. I think sometimes you have to be careful, because if you're writing for kind of younger readers, the stuff, the nostalgia elements kind of tend to go over their heads. So obviously you don't want to completely change what is the centre of a character. You want to keep it, fun, and you want to get hold of what is fun about it. But at the same time, you want to make sure that it's in situations which are relevant, to readers around at the moment. So that you want to include things like mobile phones, apps, stuff like that. Just things that are in their world. Kids love apps. They love tablets. They love YouTube, all stuff like that. I'm sounding very old by saying this, aren't I? But you want to include that. These kids, they like the rock and roll music, and they like the really. I don't know what I'm talking about, but yes. But so you want to kind of include that, and you want to make it relevant to to stuff that they will find amusing. Because if you don't, I think you're going to lose them.
But there's one thing I wanted to ask about Faceache in particular, because there's part of Ken Reed's genius was his mastery of the grotesque and the comedic grotesque. Is that a very fine line between doing that kind of comedic grotesque and just going over into it just being kind of scary or mean or nasty? How do you keep the comedy in there?
Well, I think there always is a fine line between kind of comedy and horror, isn't there? That there's the kind of the idea of the strange and the surreal can go either way sometimes, and that's why a lot of comedy writers write horror and horror writers end up writing comedy, because there's they are quite closely linked. I think it's a very fine line, and you have to be very careful about it. And I think it's kind of to do with the intention sometimes, because especially for shorter humour strips, they do live in their own kind of moral universe, don't they? That people get what's coming to them, or people kind of people end up in certain situations because of the choices they've made. So it's to do with that as well. It's to do with the kind of its own comedic logic in a way. If that makes sense. Yeah,
absolutely. Lizzie, I wanted to come on to you because you've scripted Gums, which was one of my favourite stories when I was a kid, about the shark with the wonderful comedic dentures. What was when you got the opportunity to play with Gums as a character? Was it difficult, or did an idea immediately spring into your mind?
It was a fairly quick process. The heart of the story is really that Bluey, a surfer, is trying to chase down Gums and steal his dentures. And that's it. And you look back in the archive and you go, week to week to week, it's how do we find new ways for a surfer to steal a shark's teeth? And then for the shark to get his teeth back. And after that, you can just do whatever you want. And you go, this is wonderful. So the introduction this time, the new character this time, is a marine biologist called Sophie Justice, who is interested in research and tagging sharks and saving the ocean. So if you like, the updating process was around themes about plastic and oceans and marine life, which are very much of the moment. But still, at the heart of it, it's a surfer chasing a shark to steal his teeth. And you can't argue with that. You know where you're going. You know where you're going with that. And it was one of my favourites too. So right. I'm glad you said that. I'm glad it wasn't just me.
Perfect.
Society.
One of the things I'm interested about with these comedy scripts is you've got Abigail Bulmer, who's probably slightly better known to 2000 AD audiences, a colorist for 2000 AD in the magazine, but has also done stuff, artwork for us before. When writing comedy, is there a degree that you have to really trust the storytelling of the artist, to get the beats right?
Absolutely. And particularly in this kind of fast-paced stuff. And actually, if you look at some of the other stories, look at the Sweeny Toddler story in the comic, there are hundreds of things in every panel. Hundreds of things. Yeah. It's incredible. And I look at mine where there's maybe 3 things in every panel. I'm thinking, this is a bit fast. And you go, no, this is quite slow. But yeah, to actually make sure you get the beats, you can fill the panels with multiple things, which a lot of the time you don't get to do in more adult-oriented comics or more emotional comics. You can just go crazy.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the history of these kind of comics as well, that you look at people like, Leo Baxendale and, and Dan Basson, they just filling the panels, all these incredible gags and I remember as a kid just reading them again and again and finding all these different little jokes that I'd missed the first 2 or 3 times that I've read them, which I just think is fantastic.
Well, it was a question I was going to ask Tanya, actually, because Tanya, you're the artist on Ivolot and Tony Broke. Yeah. What was your experience of writing? Have you done sort of comedy, kids comedy stuff before?
I did Strawberry Shortcake for Ape Entertainment. So that was sort of in the kids' comedy, I guess, in a very pink, sparkly way. But that's the most cartoony I've gone. So yeah, just returning to that. No, this is kind of the only thing I've done with this. So it's interesting. Yeah, it's good.
Were there any particular kind of challenges on that stuff? Because it's scripted by Matt Smith, who we know is the editor of 2000 AD, lots of writing experience on other stuff. Were there any particular difficulties you found sort of getting the speed right, the storytelling right, the tone right on something like this?
Well, once I knew it was only 2 pages. That's the only time I've done just 2 pages in a whole story, and it kind of made me feel a bit nervous. But when I was paneling it out, thinking this is good, this is a whole story, and although I felt really sorry for the characters because they had so little time to tell their story. But I think it's normal for a strip like this to be this short. I'm just not used to it at all. I'm used to doing 12 44 pages of story. So but it worked, and the script was really great, and the characters were brilliant, and they really worked the page, and it just fit in all so nicely. So no, I'm really happy with it, and the script was really fantastic and made me laugh anyway. So hopefully a lot of people. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of an interesting point about making people laugh. Obviously, this is a comic book for kids. It's being made by people in their 20s, 30s, dare I mention it, 40s. When Ned's kind of touched on this point already, but Tanya, when you're doing something like this, how conscious are you that it is for a younger audience, and does that affect your choices in how you present things, if you see what I mean?
Not really, because I think it was really fun anyway. So I looked at the characters, and I drew them and designed them and everything, and then just kind of got to know them as who they were, and then I kind of just did it as how I usually do it, and how the characters fit inside that world. So it wasn't a particularly. I did it maybe more brighter colors than I would normally, but no, the characters just told their own story, and they're really fun, and I hope that they appeal to young people. I mean, the story and the characters they're as old as time, and that kind of concept is as old as time. So I don't think it's not gonna age really. All you really had to do, what Matt Smith had to do really was, as Ned said, just put some mobile phones in there. That's really
that's all that's changed, isn't it?
That's all that's changed, because these characters are so old, and people might think that society's moved on, but it hasn't really deep down. So, and especially because this is all about class. And that's still there.
There's a good friend of mine who says there's nothing funnier than people falling over. and it holds true that people falling over remains largely. I don't always agree, but largely that's funny. Sort of slapstick stuff is timeless. Some of the wordplay that's in here, it's kind of. There's not so much of it because it's for a younger audience, so you kind of can't necessarily do as much sophisticated punning as one might want to. But yeah, I think Tanya's right. There's so much timeless stuff in this humour that it just transcends. Whether it's the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, whatever. Have there been other decades? I don't know.
maybe just reminding people again that it is just about that, and it's not really changed. And hey, we might be really old and decrepit, but we still think poop jokes are funny, and we still think we're like you.
Well, it's been interesting to see some of the reaction online to what we're doing with this. And Keith, this is a question I want to ask you, because there's been some comments of, oh, these don't look like they did when I was a kid. Why are you messing around with these?
I knew that was going to
but
I know that's the most annoying thing. Yeah, I mean, what can you do? Unfortunately, people pass, and other artists have moved on to other strips. It's not like we're kind of reinventing the wheel. It's just a bit of a non-comment, really, to say, oh, well, that doesn't look like that character used to. No, it doesn't, because the original artist or an artist who took over on that strip has gone now. I mean, what can you do? Just accept it and move on, or or if you're that offended, you don't really have to pick anything up. But it's a bit silly.
You can buy reprints from the archive.
Exactly. Do you know what? You're hired. Well done. Exactly. Buy the reprint from the archive.
That was a great plug. That was very good. That's seamless.
Exactly.
It's kind of because you're essentially bringing characters back from people's childhood. You're dealing not just with how they see them now, but the people's views of their childhoods. And it's interesting to hear the point that you made about how really the experience of childhood hasn't really changed that much in all this time.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. Very true. It's funny. I was going to say on the same topic, though, there was one chap online who was saying, well, you can't do Sweeny Toddler if it's not Leo Baxendale. And then the same guy made a comment saying, when he saw a Tom Patterson image, saying, oh, my God, that's fantastic. So, you've just got to be a bit open-minded, give it a chance. But there's not one strip, in my mind anyway, that's a dud in here. I think all the artists have done extremely well. All the writing's great. I've never been happier with something that I've commissioned.
I think it's about getting kind of the energy to the strips right, isn't it? It's about kind of getting what the fun thing, working out what the core fun things about the characters are, and is it a shark trying to get teeth back? Is it what is it? Someone doing silly faces? Is it a class thing? Is it a status thing? And then trying to keep that as kind of focused as possible.
Yeah, those underlying things which make them the characters, but not necessarily make them look exactly like they did in the 70s or the 80s. Because I couldn't do that with I didn't even think about keeping it as similar as it used to look, because I'm an artist that's been brought on for this type. Yeah, I mean it would just look, I don't know, just of that age, and now we've moved on, and I'd like to use my own kind of skills with it as well, and I found the characters within it. So that helps me do the strip. So
and I think we owe it to kind of bring these characters back to life again. I mean, they're so rich and wonderful, and real nourishment for the imagination. When you see what else is on offer for kids these days, there's titles on the shelves that are called comics, but they're pretty much one page of comic strip, and then the rest of the magazines are made up of adverts.
Yeah.
I think we've completely done the right thing.
Well, that's a question I want to ask you, Keith, is why are we doing this? Obviously, it's a special, so it's not being immediately followed by another issue. Why bring these characters back? What are we hoping to achieve by, resurrecting Faceache and Sweeny Toddler and all these other classic characters?
Well, from my own point of view, like I say, I lament the fact that there aren't any real kind of comics on the high street for younger kids to really get stuck into. I mean, you've got the Phoenix, and we all know the Phoenix is wonderful, but it's not like you can walk into any W.H. Smiths and pick it up. And then all the other titles that are on offer are just absolutely, a lot of them just don't offer that much up in way of comic strip. Like I say, page after page of advertising, or a really kind of terrible piece of plastic tat attached to the cover, or cheat codes for games. And I mean, it's funny, but I just don't see anything out there that and I think comics are more than valid, especially when you're trying to nurture young minds. I know several of my friends, myself included. I mean, I don't think I'd be as voracious a reader if it wasn't for comic books. And you just don't see that anymore. And I think there's been a bit of a marked decline in kids that actively pick up books these days. And I put a lot of that down to stuff like comics being missing from the shelves.
Yeah, and I think
it's all about computer games and very bad cartoons about dogs who rescue people.
Oh.
Of which I've seen every episode about 1 billion times.
Ned, you sound like you want to say something.
Yeah, no, I think that in other countries you do see a lot more focus on kind of comic books, you know, for younger readers. And I think it's a shame that we don't really have that they're not really held in the same high regards over here. And I think it'd be great if, you know, something like this kind of started that back up again.
And also, perhaps the uniqueness here is that this is a comic just for a comic's sake, rather than a comic that's saying, hey, now buy the toy, or now watch the cartoon, or tie into the clothing, or whatever it might be. You know, that it's not a franchise-driven comic; it's just a comic, and that's really unusual.
I like the fact, Keith, that you put on the front cover. There's no plastic that comes with this issue, specifically kind of calling out all those weird little toys that clutter the supermarket shelves.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, we did look into that.
Busted.
A couple of episodes on TV of these nature programs, and you go, you know what? No, I don't want to add to the mess our oceans are in. So no, we done a complete U-turn and said, no, we don't need anything like that on there. It's all about the content. The content's
There's
more
so much content as well. There's just there's nothing in there that isn't just drawings and bright colors and stories and characters, and you don't need anything else to have the writing and the reading experience, you know.
Exactly. And if we learn one thing from the first Word of Rovers graphic novel, we know that there's an appetite out there in those kind of younger readers. We know that they're out there, and we know to read more kind of stuff. So they want to read more comic book material. So hopefully this will go down quite well. And long term, I'm hoping it leads to a lot more.
Brilliant. And one of the things that's really nice to see is, as Tanya pointed out, there's lots in here, including your classic puzzles. There's a wonderful version of Sudoku, which is Millionaire Milioduku, which I really like, and like word searches and stuff like that.
Those horoscopes,
yes.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's making it more, I don't know, readable, giving it a bit of longevity rather than just being, I've read that and it's done kind of thing.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think we're going to have a lot of thankful parents who, if they pick this up for their kids when they're on a long journey, we might save them a bit of grief for half an hour or so.
Do you know, that is exactly what I was going to say. I remember picking up these when I was a kid, being handed a comic, and it's like, right, that's you. Yeah. And you'd sit and you'd read everything twice, and you'd do the puzzles, and then you'd swap, and I'd swap with my brother, and it was great. And we were good, well-behaved children for 2 hours. Wonderful.
But it was a 3-hour car journey. That was
and then a week's holiday, and then we were atrocious. We'd learned all these great examples of how to behave from from comic characters. So
I mean, ultimately, it's been mentioned a couple of times already. It's about fun, isn't it? It's about encouraging and having fun, and doing that in a context which is not I wouldn't use the word harmless, but just interesting and enthralling and engaging, really, isn't it?
Oh, totally.
No, wonderful. I just wanted to round things off a little bit. I just want to ask each of you if there's a character or something that you'd like to bring back, something that you think, if we do more of this, what's the kind of thing you would like to see? Tanya, what kind of characters and things would you like to see in any future kind of Core and Buster specials or humour specials?
The ones I was working on. And everyone was going to see. Everyone's going to say that, obviously, because they're biased. But when I was working on the characters, when I was designing them and just drawing them, because you don't get that much time with them. And when I was drawing the 2 pages, I was just like, even though they're sort of one-dimensional, characters, because like she's rich, she's poor. Let's laugh at that. But it's so much more than that when I was drawing them, because it's they had just little idiosyncrasies that I didn't quite imagine when I first saw them. When I was drawing them and designing them and putting them in the situations, and they just came alive. I think they deserve a lot more than just a two little page strip. And I don't know. I really miss working with them. So yeah, I really like them. But no, they're all great, and I think they all deserve a place in today's sort of comics. And yeah, I just really like them. I think everyone will say the same thing, though.
Lizzie, what about you? Because we haven't really got time to discuss it in any depth on this occasion, but you're actually editing the Tammy and Ginty special that we're doing later in the year, which obviously is reviving two other great comic books of the 1970s and 80s. What are the kind of things that you want to see more of from Rebellion in the future?
So it's well, obviously more Tanya and Ginty specials. More of me and more of Tanya.
This is going to be an enlightening interview.
So it's hard to think about bringing back characters from the, if you like, the kids comics end of it. My head has been in characters from girls comics for several months, and that's just such a rich archive. I mean, there's volumes and volumes of about 15 years worth of girls comics to go through. Treasure in there. The thing this time around, Gums was a nice character to choose because Gums is a lot of fun, and I kind of remembered Gums and Bluey. Secretly, I was looking at the potential list and thinking of Disappearing Tricks and Ivor Lott and Tony Broke and Faceache and X-Ray Specs, and those are the ones that I'm thinking, those are like the festival headliners. Gums is playing the second stage on a Sunday afternoon. You know, these are the headliners. But I thought, no. I'm gonna know my place. I'm just gonna slot in on a Sunday afternoon and just see what happens. But yeah, to actually kind of, if you like, upgrade, almost graduate to some of those even bigger characters that I guess I lost my opportunity. They've been nabbed. So.
Ned, what about you? Because I mean, you're not just a writer. You've been an editor for many years as well, working on things like Star Wars, and so you know the big kind
of ones with the free plastic tat on the
yes,
front.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you from your experience and your point of view? What should be the next step for Rebellion?
I don't know. I think it's such a fantastic comic, and I'm so the fact that I got to work on it is absolutely brilliant. I'm so envious that Keith kind of got to really roll his sleeves up and kind of get to play with it in such, play with this sandbox in such great detail. I mean, I think obviously you'd need to see how this is received, but I think I think there should be a million of these things, and that there should be one of these every week, and there should be absolutely tons of them because they're brilliant. I think in terms of kind of the characters, I loved working on Faceache, and I'm very envious that that anyone got to work on Sweeny Toddler again. It's such a wonderful character. But with my editor's hat on, I think that it's such a lovely package, and it's been kind of done with such a kind of loving and respectful and fun and up to date way. That I think this is going to be something really special, and I think it's going to do really, really well in the newsstands. So I'm expecting to see more of these because I think the market's going to respond.
Brilliant. Keith, just to round off here. I mean, you've talked a little bit about we want to do more in the future. Ultimately, what's the value of doing something like this? Because obviously this is a one-off. It's packed with stuff, but there's just so much more we could do. What's the value of exploring these classic characters?
Well, just because they're so great, and I think that there's an audience out there. There's a potential audience out there that we're not currently reaching with our other publications, as great as they are. I think it's all about getting to a younger audience for me. And just, 2000 is great, but it's been going for years, and the people that buy it, they're well versed in comic book lore. They've been reading comics for years. But just seeing a kid pick up something like this for the first time and just being absolutely in awe of it. I was at a wedding at the weekend, and I stuck it in front of my niece's daughter, who's 4 years old, and she was just blown away by it. She just became transported to this other world for half an hour, and you don't get that with 40-year-old men. It's all about the kids. I want to reach kids. I want to reach kids with this title, with these fantastic characters who deserve a new lease of life. And it can be done. The Beanos prove that. The Phoenix on its own level has proved that there's an audience out there who are rabid for this stuff. I think these characters need to be seen in a contemporary setting for a brand new generation. I think there's lots of life there. And let's face it, the industry needs it in general. Comics are so, these days, so geared towards just an older set. And I mean, DC have taken strides to do more YA stuff, which is great. But we work in a fantastic industry, and importantly, it is an industry. It employs a lot of people. But if we don't start trying to cater for a new generation or generations to come, it's going to slowly wither on the vine, and it's going to disappear, and that would be a massive tragedy.
That's why I give away free drawings at comic conventions to kids.
Exactly, and then, you know, it's just been an all-round fantastic experience that I would love to repeat every quarter or every fortnight. It's been great working with a lot of new creators who I haven't worked with a lot in the past, and the whole thing's been really invigorating. And I've been told I was a much nicer person in the office when I was putting this together. Usually,
I'm making no comment whatsoever on that. That's just going to get me into trouble.
Say anything there, Mike, or is that
okay? Wait, I mean, it's. This is just, bear in mind, this is just one thing. Because obviously, we've got the Humour Special. We've also got the Funny Pages, which is our free comic book day title, which is reprints of the classic stories to kind of introduce them to an audience. And we've got 2000 AD Regened coming back, but in 2000 AD itself, so a regularly numbered prog, just returning to like Cadet Dread and all those other amazing characters. So this is kind of our push, really, isn't it, Keith, to see what the appetite really is.
This is it, yeah, completely, 100%. Yeah. And I think it's out there, and I'm in total agreement with Ned. I think if enough eyes get on this Core Buster special, that one's definitely going to be a hit.
Yeah.
In the way that Roy's done so well.
Yeah. Fantastic.
We've proved that audience is out there. And this is, and I think Core Buster has got an even wider appeal. So, I've got my fingers crossed, but I'm really optimistic about this one. And like I say, you know, my long time being at Rebellion now, I think this is the most enjoyable thing I've had to edit so far.
Fantastic.
Oh.
Well, thank you so much to Keith and Tanya and Lizzie and Ned for talking about the Core Buster Humour Special. I'm so excited. I've had a read of it. It's absolutely brilliant. Make sure you get your copy from your local newsagent or comic book store. So much more in store from 2000 AD, not just for all ages, but also some other interesting projects down the line. We've already mentioned the Tammy Ginty special, which, very exciting times for 2000 AD and the treasury of British comics. That's all for this week. Thanks for tuning in. We shall see you in 2 weeks' time for another episode of the Galaxy's Greatest Podcast, Splendid Verthrig Earthlets.
Fill power levels dangerously high. Alert, alert. Read 2000 AD every week. Ask your comic book store or newsagent now. Subscribe to the Galaxy's Greatest Comic at 2000ADonline.com. Subscribe digitally on our apps for Apple, Android, and Windows 10. And download DRM free copies from 2000ADonline.com. Alert, alert. Stand by for urgent updates. Search for 2000 AD on Twitter and Facebook. Watch the latest videos at youtube.com/2000 AD online. And follow on Instagram at Insta2000 AD. Program complete. Shutting down.